Hello everyone, this is Creative Fun back again with another video, and today we're going to have a look at the mission editor. Now I actually received a request from literally a subscriber asking me about some of my mission files, and since I'm a teacher at profession, I teach game graphics and 3D modeling and animation. I'm the kind of guy who thinks like, oh, you give a guy a fish, you feed him for a night, teach him to fish, and you feed him for the rest of his life, or something in that order. So I was figured out, instead of just handing out my missions files, I'm gonna just show you guys how to recreate them. So before we jump into the mission editor, I want to show you a really cool feature that's useful even if you don't intend to make any missions. It's the encyclopedia, and you can access this from the mission editor too. I'm going to show you in a second. What the encyclopedia shows you is most of the units in DCS, as well as some of the weapon systems as well. Everything from ships to airplanes. So let's jump into the mission editor. Now first I'm just going to point out here under miscellaneous you can also find the encyclopedia, so you can, without having to access the mission, exit the mission editor, you can just jump in directly here as well and get, you know, whatever information you want from different units, which is very useful. So up here in the top left corner, I should say, you have all the menus. You have file, you have the regular open, save and stuff like that. You have the ability to add different types of vehicles, start a mission, a campaign builder, and some customized options as well, and a mission generator. This allows you to generate a part of the mission automatically. What we're going to check is just some of the basic features, how to add an aircraft and jump right into it. So let's start with just adding your own aircraft. Let's say you want to practice a bit laggy here. Let's say you want to practice some landing approach. First thing you want to do is under the OPG or objects, you can add basically any object you can find in DCS. So you click on the little aircraft icon. You have helicopters as well as ships and tanks as well, but click on the aircraft option and then just left click wherever you want the aircraft to spawn. Now if you look to the left here, we have like a property window where we can set different properties for the aircraft. First thing you could do is, for example, set the country. So let's go down here and make like a small mission for a vegan aircraft. First, you select the country that you want it to belong. Select Sweden, of course. Select the role. And some aircraft have different types of role. For example, the vegan can perform a wide variety of roles, whereas some aircraft, like a tanker aircraft, of course, cannot perform any close air support. And then we have to actually select the aircraft, and you'll notice that some aircrafts are yellow and some are gray. The yellow aircraft is the modules you have installed in your DCS, so this is models you can take control of yourself. So let's go with AJS 37. There we go. Second, we have skill. We jumped across this unit. I'm going to check this in a moment here, but then you have the skill level, and this is very important if this is an aircraft you're going to fly by yourself. You have to go down here and select player. Otherwise you will not be able to access it, or rather you will not spawn in it when you start the mission. There's a couple other things you can edit here, everything from comms to tail number, call sign, and the name of the group if you make more than one airplane in a single group. I'm going to show you that in a moment. Overall, this is the basic information you need to just be able to access the aircraft in a mission. Now we're going to go down a little bit here. I'm going to check settings here in this tab. You can see there's a lot of different tabs here, and I'm not going to go over all of them. So we're going to focus mainly on the two tabs that has to do with waypoints and then ornament. So first we're at the waypoint tab. Now this is where you create the initial starting point of your aircraft as well as add additional waypoints. So you can first select which waypoint to edit from this area, this pop-up menu here. We haven't created any waypoints yet, so of course there's no waypoints to edit. And you can name your waypoints also if you feel the need to it. And you can also select what type of waypoint. So we're going to do a simple approach pattern here where this aircraft lands. So let's start with altitude. It's in feet. Of course, the Viggen's altitude meter is in meters, so you kind of need to either have a converter on hand or be pretty good at converting by yourself. So let's say you want to start flying at around 3,000 meters, which is about 9,100 feet. Of course, the initial speed. And we're not going to set an initial heading because once we set out the waypoints, the aircraft will be pointing at the first waypoint. So there's no reason for us to fiddle around where the initial heading where the aircraft is supposed to point. You also have the start time. Now, generally, you would like the start time to be the same time as your mission start if there's an aircraft you're actually going to sit in. So we're going to pass this one for now. Now, there are three simple buttons here. Usually by default, the moment you create an aircraft or a unit, you're going to have it selected on the add button. And what the add button is, we're going to click it here, and then you can just click on the map and you can create waypoints for the aircraft to fly to. So we created three simple waypoints here that just show us the flight path we want to take. These waypoints will also be loaded into the aircraft's navigation computer if it has a waypoint navigation computer. For reference, for example, the MiG-21 does not have like an inertial navigation system or GPS navigation, nor does it have a waypoint navigation system. So the waypoints will not be loaded into the computer of the MiG-21, or rather there's no computer in the MiG-21 to load it in. This is true for a lot of propeller aircrafts as well as the early jet fighters like the F-86 and the MiG-15. However, the Viggen's computer is capable of handling this, so it will load in the waypoints into its navigation computer. You can also access these waypoints using the knee board. So there's always a map on the knee board if you have the default one, and right there you can check your position and use that to navigate if you don't have a navigation computer inside the aircraft you're flying. So once that is set, we're going to have to edit some of our waypoints. So we're going to click on the edit button here, and this will allow us to select a waypoint, and first we can move it around if we want, adjust it, and we can also edit it. Before we do that, I just want to show you something here. Let's check at our ETA. You see this has switched, so if you click on this initial start point, you'll see it says start here, but if we click on the first waypoint here, it switches to ETA, which stands for estimated time to arrival. So at the current speed and altitude, it is going to take this aircraft 1 minute and 28 seconds from its starting position to reach waypoint 1. And then we can check the entire flight path, for example, select waypoint 3, and we can see it here. Now this is of course dependent on you maintaining this specific speed, so you always have to calculate for that as well, but it will give you a good idea for how long a flight is going to take. So let's edit some of these waypoints. As we reach waypoint 1, we want to drop down a little bit in altitude. We want to be around 5,000 feet. Press enter there, and we want to be around 210 knots. At waypoint 2, we want to drop even lower, 4,000 feet, and we'll be in around 180 knots. And finally, this is our destination, and now we're actually going to have to change the type. Before we've been using the turning point type because, well, it's a turning point. We turn at this specific point. However, this third waypoint we actually want to land, so we're gonna switch. Instead of flyover point, or turning point, we're gonna choose landing point, and we're gonna have a final speed of let's say touchdown speed around 140 knots, or not 1040, 140 knots. So now we've planned out a pretty good flight plan. Now the speed here is not really necessary to edit in your flight plan because you will be able to adjust your speed, of course, by moving the throttle. However, if you're making an AI aircraft fly in a certain path, where you want the AI aircraft to form up or reach a certain destination at a certain specific time. If this is selected like average, good, high, excellent, or so on, the AI is going to fly the aircraft, and it's going to try to maintain the speed that you have set in the waypoints here. So this would very accurately just recreate a simple approach tutorial for you. So you could easily use something simple like this just to practice landing. So before we move on, we're just actually going to check this little ornaments tab as well. I'm not going to go into the rest of these, but if you go into the ornaments tab or payload, you can actually select the weapons that your aircraft start with, as well as some other things here. You can select the fuel, shaft, flare. Of course, the Vigan doesn't have shaft and flare, so that's there's no need to do anything about that. However, you can even select skin for the aircraft, which is, I think, is pretty cool. So basically everything the aircraft can carry, you can modify here, and usually there's a set of pre-selects here you can choose from, but you can also of course just create a new payload, new payload 2 maybe, there we go, and you can by right clicking select the different types of weapon systems you want to equip your aircraft with. Of course this also applies to any AI aircraft or any AI unit that has some sort of ornament or payload connected to it. You can adjust it here, and you can equip it or unequip it as you choose. So let's press a little X here and go back here. Now let's say you want to create an aircraft that starts from the ground. So what we're going to do now is going to choose our little Vigan here, and we're going to actually delete some waypoints. So we're going to select a waypoint, press delete again, and make sure that this last one here is press delete as well. And we're actually going to make this aircraft take off from the encyclopedia. And we're going to set up a little training sortie where it flies to this little Cobility cross, as I call it, and it's going to tag some units there. So first we need to make sure we can start on the ground. So as we're on the starting point here, we can go to type of waypoint, and we can select, for example, takeoff from runway, takeoff from ramp, takeoff from parking hot. Now takeoff from runway basically places the aircraft on the runway. So it's going to be spooled up, ready to go. You can just slam the throttle into afterburner and take off. Takeoff from parking hot places the aircraft as one of the many parking slots. You can see here there's a parking tab showed up, and we can switch between these, place it at any spot where you can park an aircraft at this airbase. But parking hot means it's turned on and everything is loaded, you don't have to do any startup procedure. And then takeoff from ramp means that the aircraft is cold, so you have to do the startup procedure by yourself. Of course the payload here is still relevant. If you select the aircraft to have certain payloads, it will have that payload when you spawn. If you select it to be empty, you have to contact the tower yourself and request weapon systems. Before we move on, it's one more thing you have to check. You see here, this is Senaki-Koki airbase, and if I click on it, you can see here there's some information. Click on the text here, you can get the tower frequencies, the name, and more importantly the coalition. Now it's very important to make sure that this aircraft here is in the same coalition as the Senaki-Koki, and you can easily confirm that by looking at the color of your aircraft here. Is it blue or red? If it's blue and the text here is blue, then both are blue. However, we can switch it to red, and that will turn the Koki airbase to red, and this means that if we start here, we cannot rearm or refuel. And any units here that's also red is of course going to be hostile towards our little blue bird here. So that's quite important, I think, to remember. So let's just plan a small flight path for a little aircraft here. We're gonna place the first waypoint there, second waypoint there, and then the third waypoint here. I'm going to edit mode. Now the Vigan requires generally some sort of visual cue to align its navigation system. So I'm going to place one waypoint on the island here, and I can use that as a way to realign my navigation system. So there's no offset from taking off. This is not, of course, necessary with more advanced aircraft, but it's a good feature. It's a good thing to have to remember if you do anything with the Viggen. So let's create some enemies. Let's create some ground targets. Now, ground targets you create just as easily as with the aircraft. You simply click on whatever type of vehicle or unit you want to deploy. In this case, a ground vehicle. And then you click it down here. And it will be deployed there. Now, once again, you see here, it defaults to the previous selected country, and I selected Sweden. And of course, we want to kill Russians. And if you're Russian and offended by this, then I apologize. But we want to kill Russians in this mission. So we have to select Russians. And if I deselect this one, oh, sorry, as you can see here now, it automatically went to the add waypoints. So if I click, I can create waypoints. And now this vehicle will drive around here. We're going to delete those. We don't need them. Select edit, and I'm going to deselect this. You can see this is now red, and that means that, you know, it's going to count as an enemy, which means that we do not get a minus score for attacking it. So just one target is not enough. We want a lot more targets. So I'm thinking we'll make a column of trucks maybe. So to create a column, we don't need to, we can of course just click here again and keep adding units. However, that is not very efficient, because then we'll create a lot of bunch of units, and if we want to move them, we have to move them one by one. So under the units section here, we can actually create a lot more units by increasing the number here to the right. And as you can see, as I increase this, we increase the number of units. You can of course click on each and every unit here and move them around if you want to. So we can place them out like this if we want to. So we can manually move the units, but if we click on the first unit, number 1 here, you can see we can move the entire division or group, which means we can easily relocate the entire the entire group of units without having to manually click each and every single one of them. Let's create another group up here, and we're going to try to see if we can get them to align in this direction here. So we're going to check on this heading, start heading, so we can actually select which direction this unit will be pointing at. And then let's see if we cannot create some more units. And so you can see it kind of follows the arrow here. So we got the units a little bit better lined up. I accidentally created a waypoint again. I need to remember to press edit before moving. So that way we can create the units in a single line where we want them. And in terms of vehicles, or ground vehicles, we can also select if they're gonna use certain type of formation, or if they're gonna travel on a road. And if we draw a waypoint, for example, if we tell them to be on road and we add a waypoint to this section here, you can see how the waypoint lines up with road, and they will drive alongside this road, which can be cool if you want to create a mission where you have a column of trucks traveling through a city or something like that. As you see, it requires no planning or no programming or intimate knowledge of the mission editor. It's just you clicking on a bunch of buttons here. Also, if you want to switch type of units, you can click on whatever units you want to switch, and under type here, first category, there's different types of category here, and then you can switch and can select units as well. Just FYI, if you're creating an air defense system, it's very important that you, for example, here under air defense, you have a bunch of different types of SAM systems. If you're creating a SAM system that requires radar or target control and so on, you need to have at least one of each and every unit. I'm sure there are plenty of tutorials. There's probably a manual about how you do that as well. Or you can just check how I set up these SAM systems in my Viggen RVR tutorial. I think I show a little bit of that there. But it took me time to figure that out by myself, so I'm just saying it here now that setting up air defenses that requires, like for example the Patriot mission will require different types of units, one radar, one control station, and one launcher, I think. So you just need to make sure you have all those pieces in the same group. So I don't think there's that much more to cover in terms of creating units. You can of course practice, or rather experiment yourself. You have every type of unit here available, and you can even put down buildings or static objects that cannot be manipulated. I just want to add a couple of more things about the units before we move on. We're gonna check the weather and how to save your mission and so on in just a second. First, if you click on your let's say the starter aircraft that you want to fly. Let's say you want to do a multiplayer mission where you want your friends to fly with you. When you have the player here, this is only for single player missions, so you cannot join the aircraft if you start a server. However, if you switch over to client, this means that you can enter it in a server setting, and if you increase the unit type here, see here we have multiple Wiggins now, 4 Wiggins, that's very nice. And if we move around here, you can see that all of them are now client, and that means that we can have a nice 4-ship flight multiplayer setting. And of course you can go in and select ornament separately for each of them if you want to. Well, that includes the skin as well. So before I finish this rather simple tutorial, I do want to show you a couple of more things that I think is quite good to know about when you start your first simple mission. Number one, we can go up here in the mission briefing. You can set the date and time of mission start. So depending on which month you set, you will have different types of textures on the ground, like winter, I think there's autumn, spring, and summer textures as well. So you can set this will affect both weather and well, the setting, the visuals of the map as well. Time of day can be pretty nice to set as well if you want the mission to take place in the morning or in the evening. You're also able to write some text about each blue task, red task, and the main situation. Moving along, the second thing I want to show you under the mission editor toolbar here is the weather system. You can of course set a dynamic weather condition here, but that's a little bit fiddly, so I have not tried that too many times. However, the static weather system is pretty straightforward. You have cloud and atmosphere, density of clouds, precipitation, QNH. You can set winds at different altitudes, as well as turbulence, and also enable fog. There's a couple of preset weather systems here that you can also enable. I think that pretty much wraps it up for this rather simple tutorial. So with the things I've just gone through here, if you experiment with it, you'll be able to create some very simple and fun missions, I think. And every mission I have shown on my channel so far that I played myself, including the Kobuleti Cross and Hero of Kobuleti, missions are done in this manner. The same goes for aircraft as well. If you want to create like an enemy aircraft, you can just click on the aircraft, plonk it in, select which country. You can create some waypoints, and you can edit the skill attack. You can edit the ornament of the aircraft, and it will perform these tasks. So I haven't done anything more advanced than this in the mission editor. However, I do think this is enough for you to create your own missions, so to practice and increase your skill level. And I've used this a lot, especially when practicing landing or specific tasks like deploying weapons with the Viggen. It's been very useful just to be able to set up and have full control over the entire environment, so I can practice in the way that I feel is best for me, instead of relying on the built-in tutorials and the available missions for the Viggen or Mirage as well. So I hope you enjoyed this little quick tutorial and found it useful. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out my Twitter, subscribe, maybe leave a like or a comment down below, and have a good night or a good day.